Welcome to the latest news report on day 324 of the war in Ukraine. You are listening to The Account. Thank you for tuning in. Today, the BBC published an interview with the Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksii Reznikov. We will take a closer look at the interview before we go over the minor news grouped into the situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and the international developments. But first, the flashpoints along the front. Soledar. According to the General Staff of Ukraine, battles continue for Soledar. Not much is known which parts Ukraine still holds, but we know Russia attacked the Soledar district of Silch. The Russian Ministry of Defense has officially announced the capture of Soledar today. Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov said that the capture of Soledar became possible thanks to the continuous strikes of the Russian aviation, missile forces, and artillery on positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. He did not mention the Wagner forces. A video shared on social media by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine shows a soldier codenamed Madyar saying Ukrainian military is still fighting for the city as of Friday, 2:13 p.m. Bakhmut. Battles for the city continue. Fighting is concentrated on the eastern outskirts and the villages to the south. Opytne and Klishchivka are reportedly the hottest spots. Wagner claimed they captured all of Opytne. However, Ukraine seems to be still holding parts in the north of the village, with most of the northern area being a grey zone. Igor Kimakovsky, advisor of the DPR's acting head, claimed Bakhmut was in an operational encirclement. However, Yevgeny Prigozhin's press service almost instantly denied the claim. The Ukrainian military spokesman Serhiy Cherevati reported that Russia shelled Bakhmut over 200 times in the past 24 hours. And now the BBC interview with Ukrainian Minister of Defense Oleksii Reznikov. According to Defense Minister Oleksii Reznikov, Ukraine has become a de facto and not de jure member of the NATO alliance. He also expects that the alliance will provide Ukraine with the necessary weapons in the near future. Reznikov, during the interview, called the appointment of the Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov, as the commander of the war against Ukraine, the result of the conflict between the Russian army and Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner PMC. He noted that General Surovikin was the mastermind behind the massive missile strikes on critical infrastructure by Russia, which did not yield the expected results and only reduced the Russian stockpiles of missiles. Reznikov further stated that the Russian army is losing approximately 500 to 600 people per day along the entire front, while Ukraine suffers 10 times less losses. He noted that Russia could gather forces, ammunition, and weapons to launch a new offensive in the east and south, and that spring is the best period for a renewed start of offensive actions for both sides. When asked about Soledar, Reznikov said, "The situation in Soledar is very complicated but under control." According to him, the Wagner mercenaries used human wave attacks continuously, which led to a large number of losses in their ranks. Asked further about the continued claims of the capture of Soledar by Yevgeny Prigozhin, he stated, "Yevgeny Prigozhin wants to show that his Wagner group is way more effective than the Russian army, and the capture of Soledar will help provide at least some evidence of this." And now for the minor news updates, starting with the situation inside Ukraine. According to Ukroboronprom, a Ukrainian-made attack UAV with an effective range of 1,000 kilometers has already been tested. Due to security concerns, no further information can be provided, the company said. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal announced that the State Agency for Infrastructure Projects and the State Agency for Motor Roads were joined into the new State Agency for Reconstruction and Development of Infrastructure. The new agency will be tasked with the reconstruction of infrastructure destroyed in the war. As of fall 2022, more than 2.4 million Ukrainians lived in damaged or destroyed housing. The Serhiy Prytula Charity Foundation shared a video showing the newly developed Shark UAV successfully conducting reconnaissance in the skies over the city of Donetsk. The UAV is designed to be resistant to electronic warfare systems. And now a look at the situation inside the occupied territories. According to Serhiy Haidai, head of the Luhansk Oblast Military Administration, collaborators in Kreminna and Svatove have begun to relocate to safer areas. As stated by Petro Andriushchenko, advisor to the Mariupol city mayor, Russia has begun redeploying military personnel and equipment from Yalta and Ursov near Mariupol in the direction of northern Donetsk Oblast. He further noted that the city of Berdiansk has been cordoned off and only those with passes are allowed in. This is most likely related to the establishment of a new military base housing helicopters. Russia is likely preparing the defense of the city of Enerhodar, Energoatom reports. Russian forces are setting up barracks and ammunition depots in the basement of residential buildings. And now for the latest updates from Russia and Belarus. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner PMC, has complained that his soldiers are constantly being deprived of their achieved victories by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Meanwhile, claims emerged that Wagner has started recruiting female convicts. A report from the Ukrainian military intelligence is stating that Russia is trying to expand its army to 2 million soldiers. This is evidenced by the scale of the mobilization being carried out in the Russian Federation. According to said report, Russia aims to mobilize another 500,000 Russians in order to create strategic reserves. According to Kommersant, quoting their own sources, the Kremlin's domestic political bloc has begun work on various election scenarios while assuming that elections will be held as planned in 2024 and that Vladimir Putin will take part in it. The US State Department Principal Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel stated during a press briefing that the Kremlin itself admitted the high cost of the assault on Soledar. During Russia's month-long campaign, thousands of unprepared and poorly equipped Russian conscripts have been killed. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu has said he expects to supply Ukraine with AMX-10 RC heavy armored personnel carriers, also classified as wheeled tanks, within 2 months. US President Joe Biden fully supports statements by Poland, the United Kingdom, and other allies on their readiness to supply Ukraine with tanks, as this strengthens the terrific solidarity of the international community in providing security assistance to Ukrainians. Meanwhile, the German opposition has voiced their discontent and called on stubborn Chancellor Olaf Scholz to provide tanks to Ukraine. Later today, it was reported that Germany will likely finalize a decision on supplying tanks ahead of the Ramstein Defense Summit on January 20th. Reuters reported today that Germany does not refuse to transfer Leopard tanks to Ukraine from Poland or Finland, but has not yet received an official request. According to Dmytro Kuleba, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, so far 5 countries have agreed to transfer Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine should Germany give the okay. At the same time, the United Kingdom is expected to announce a decision on their Challenger 2 tanks on Monday. Ukraine believes Britain will transfer around 10 units of Challenger 2 tanks. The New York Times believes that recent statements and actions of the United States and European countries regarding the supply of Patriot systems and tanks indicate that the West has already begun to prepare Ukraine for repelling a possible Russian offensive in spring and any future counterattacks. And now the intelligence update segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defense. The Russian defense manufacturing sector is highly likely resorting to using convict labor in an effort to meet wartime production demands. In November 2022, Ural Vagon Zavod, UVZ, Russia's largest tank manufacturer, told local media that it would employ 250 prisoners after meeting with the Federal Penal Service, FSIN. There is a long tradition of prison labor in Russia, but since 2017, forced labor as a specific criminal punishment was reintroduced. With one of the highest rates of incarceration in the world, FSIN oversees a sprawling empire of over 400,000 inmates and has frequently been accused of extreme brutality and corruption. The prison population provides a unique human resource to Russian leaders to utilize in support of this special military operation, while willing volunteers remain in short supply. Convict labor will likely be particularly in demand from manufacturers of relatively low-tech weaponry such as UVZ, which are almost certainly under intense pressure from Moscow to increase their production. And now for the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Researchers of the institute believe that Russian forces are highly likely in control of most, if not all, of Soledar. Ukrainian forces are likely pushed out of the western outskirts of the settlement. This does not constitute any imminent Russian encirclement of Bakhmut as claimed by Russia. The researchers further argue that Russian President Vladimir Putin is likely looking for scapegoats for the defense industry's struggle to supply equipment and resources. As mentioned already in yesterday's report, Vladimir Putin has publicly criticized the lack of state orders in the aviation industry and reprimanded Russian Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov for it. This is likely an attempt to further increase Vladimir Putin's image as a competent wartime leader. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. Apart from reported shelling, the update was rather short. There is a danger that the enemy will launch air and missile strikes on the entire territory of Ukraine. The enemy continues to suffer losses. Thus, in order to replenish the insufficient number of medical personnel at the Novotroitska Central District Hospital in the temporarily occupied territory of the Kherson region, reinforcements from the number of military medics of the armed forces of the Russian Federation arrived. As of January 12, 2023, up to 160 wounded occupiers were in the hospital, which was converted into a military hospital. And with that, another news report is finished. If you're interested in any of the articles, please check out the links in the description. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.